Okay, guys, I'm going to get going. Welcome to your final workshop of the day. I hope the earlier part of your day has been good and useful. This workshop is showing good practice in primary schools. Each presenter, we've got 4 presenters today, and they will give their presentation, and then after each presentation, we'll have some time for questioning if you want to. Okay, so I'm just going to hand across to Jo from Burriton to do your first presentation.
Lovely, thank you, and hello to everybody. So my name's Jo Medlyn. I'm the assistant head and PE lead at Burriton School. Next slide, please. So a little bit about our school. We are located in Saltash, southeast Cornwall, and we're affiliated with Arena. We're a primary school, so 5 to 11, and we have approximately 419 children on roll, so 2 form entry, a fairly large primary school. We're a local authority maintained school, and a special characteristic, I guess, of our school in particular is that we have an SEND unit, or otherwise known as our ARB, which currently has 19 children on roll, and we're very lucky. We've just managed to finish a build of a brand new ARB, which actually is a separate building just off the main building of our school. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Click again. Lovely, perfect. So when we returned in September 2020, there were, like many of us, if not most of us around the UK, many changes that we faced. So the first that impacted not only obviously on PE, but the whole school was changes to the school day in terms of timing. So our school had different start and finish times across each of the classes. And our break times have also been staggered, as well as our lunch times. And in fact, our lunch times have been reduced from an hour to 40 minutes, with teachers being required to cover part of that lunchtime, 40 minutes. So teacher lunch times have been reduced to more or less 30 minutes, if we're lucky. Obviously, that has an impact, as I'll go on to talk about, in terms of children having the opportunity to be active in their own freer time, so to speak. As a school, we also had in place very rigorous COVID risk assessments, both on a whole school basis, but also with regards to PE. So specifically with PE at our school, we decided in conjunction, obviously, with all sorts of guidelines from the local authority, governing bodies, sports bodies, etc., that we would approach in September with a limited equipment or no equipment PE philosophy, or indeed any equipment across the whole school. For us, that meant, for example, that we would not be allowing the children to access our PlayPod scrap store at lunchtime, and that we would limit curriculum PE equipment within their lesson times. And active break times, we would encourage staff to, again, have limited or no equipment active break opportunities. Obviously, for us all as well, there was social distancing aspects of being back at school, both outside and within the classrooms. And again, within our context, the decision was taken that we would not run after school clubs for the whole of the autumn term. The only exception being that we would run a before and later club, which is our term for the kind of wraparound care. That would be offered on a bubble basis as well. We also made the decision that there wouldn't be any off-site competitions that we would be participating in initially, and that would be reviewed on an ongoing basis. And that is the current position that we take at the moment for obvious reasons as well. Our classes were bubbles, with the odd exception that we might take a year group as a bubble, being a 2-form entry. This was largely because this allowed us to accommodate year group bubbles within our after school wraparound provision. But within school generally, we've been asked to treat a class of 30 or thereabouts as its own individual bubble. Another kind of additional consideration when we returned was that the hall, which we use for PE, indoor PE and lunches, would have minimal use. So with regards to PE, it was agreed that only very low impact activity, if that, the hall should be used for. Preferably any activity should be outside where absolutely possible. Thank you. Next slide. So where did that leave us? What questions did I have as PE lead with regards to PE coming back in September and that are still relevant now? So you can see them on the screen there. I will read them and talk around them. So first question, what can we still do? What could we still do? And what do we need to adapt or change? And what is the guidance and how does that fit in with our school's risk assessment and what has been agreed by the governors in our particular context? Obviously, just a proviso with that, as we've discussed, particularly this morning, each school will have their own risk assessment and their own take on what is right and what is going to be taken forward within their context based on national guidance. Second question there, how can we still deliver meaningful equipment-free or limited equipment PE lessons? And how can we still achieve that broad and balanced offering? How can we manage equipment that is regarded as appropriate to use? So we regard equipment that was appropriate would be equipment that could be sanitized or possibly left to be quarantined. How can we ensure that children continue to have the opportunity to participate in competition, particularly those children obviously in Key Stage 2? And finally, how can we ensure that children engage in regular physical activity during the school day? So brain breaks and active playtimes, faced with some of those new challenges linked to COVID. So the limited or no equipment, but also the aspect of having staggered break times and lunch times, meaning that whilst within my classroom, I might like an active break, but there may be a class having a scheduled break and be using it for their scheduled lunchtime or break time whilst I'm still in my teaching time. So thank you. New slide. So facing that context and those questions, at the moment, we came up with a number of solutions. The first solution, which I've yet to be able to measure the impact of, was to purchase some bubble equipment. So for each class, I used part of the underspend from the summer and from the PE premium from last year to purchase some bubble equipment. So that comprised a skipping rope per child, a bat and ball, plastic bat and ball that could be easily sanitizable, but one per child, a large foam dice that the teacher could use and children, PE leaders, pupil leaders from in each class could use to direct all sorts of kind of PE activity around, some stopwatches for bubbles, and some storage equipment per bubbles, and some big, large, chunky chalk for children to mark out courses, a bit very much in the style of the opening video that started the whole of the day off. Unfortunately, the reason I'm not able to comment on the impact yet, due to COVID and supplier issues, the equipment has come in dribs and drabs, and unfortunately it's yet to be distributed as I perhaps had wanted to right at the beginning of the autumn term. But hopefully that will be resolved very shortly and that impact can be measured by the end of the autumn too. What I hope is that equipment can be used not just in curriculum PE, but actually mainly for active break times and active lunch times, and also in active bursts. So really hitting that active 30 agenda. Obviously with COVID, there's a bit of a difference in terms of the levels of fitness and activity levels that children have experienced during lockdown and during the summer holiday. Some children in our school, as Tim alluded to, have actually become fitter during that period of time, but I would say the majority, their activity levels have decreased. So another solution or consideration to manage some of those COVID ideas was around just the careful management and monitoring of the school timetable and the school day. From a PE perspective, more important based on the different usage of our playground and grounds due to the staggered starts, staggered break times, and different ways in which the day is timetabled, which is out of my control. And then in the first 2 weeks, when we came back as a school, we decided to adopt a kind of a specific recovery curriculum, which has continued as the weeks have gone on. But as a school, we planned around a theme, a book theme, but very much was based around the mental health and well-being of the children. So the timetable for the first 2 weeks allowed for a large part of active break times, active lunch times within that timetable. What I did ask staff to do within those 2 weeks was to teach specifically playground games, so that whilst the children initially didn't have any equipment and weren't used to possibly playing without playpod equipment or playing within their restrictions more so on the playground and within their class bubbles, they had some explicit playground games that they had been taught that they could lead and play in those bubbles. We also had a very clear PE risk assessment that fitted into the whole risk assessment, which had the COVID provisions made for it. So that was very clear for staff to follow. And another part of our solution was around the participation in virtual competitions. So we've really maximised and looked out for the opportunity for us to participate in the sports hall of athletics, the winter games that we've got coming up, and certainly going forward, that will be something that we will seize with both hands. And finally, another solution, we've developed our intra-house competitions a little bit differently to how we would have done pre-COVID. So what I've asked for at the moment is that my staff, bearing in mind we're a large school, at the end of each PE unit, so assuming staff are delivering 2 PE units a half term, at the end of each half term's unit, they will have an intra-house competition. So our children in their classes are already split up into 4 teams, and within those teams they will the staff will adapt that end PE unit to allow for some kind of showcase of skill, be that a competition against themselves, the children, so it doesn't always have to be against a different house team, but they might participate against themselves, and there will be some sort of scoring system attached to that, and then those scores will be shared at an end of half-termly school assembly. So there'll be a big focus and a big fuss made about it, if you like. And those scores, as we would normally do anyway, are going to contribute towards our, hopefully, fingers crossed, our end of year sports day and results at the end of the year. So that is me. Hopefully there I've gone through some of the challenges that we faced as a school, as I'm sure many of you have faced, some of the solutions that at the moment we've found to minimise some of the potential impact that COVID could have on us as a school. So thank you. Any questions or comments or anything to add, please?
Jo, thank you very much. I really like the fact that you're still raising the profile of competition and celebrating all their successes in your intra-house competition. That sounds fab. I know sometimes these things can get swept aside with the other pressures that are going on at the moment, so that's great news. Thank you so much for presenting. I'm now going to hand over to Paul, if he's ready.
Yeah, all good, thank you. Hi guys, my name is Paul Reynolds. I'm at Trevithick Learning Academy in Camborne. Just really quickly, very similar school, I think, to Burton. We're 2 form entry, very similar numbers really. I've got an ARB as well, so quite a similar school, similar sort of size. I've got my first slide up. It's given an overview of our kind of sort of PESPA for this last half term since we've returned from the lockdown and after the summer. In terms of PE, we didn't create like a curriculum, but we did for this first half term create basically new planning that was focused on the fundamental skills across the school from years 1 to 6, but also limited equipment. So it was things that the teachers could put out and pick up that the children didn't really have to use. And then towards the end of the unit, when there was things they used, they had one each. So it was just that kind of idea of making it as simple as possible, so that the children didn't have to mix it and have all the equipment and stuff. So we did change the schemes a little bit, but again, really focused on fundamental skills. We had booked our year 3 swimming to start in November. Obviously, that's not going to happen. We're now booked for January, hopefully. And if that changes, we'll just keep moving back until we can get them in. So we actually take our year 3s normally all year. So we're looking forward to getting them back started as soon as possible when we're allowed. In terms of school sport, as there hasn't been a lot, so we actually always run an inter-house cross country ourselves before, and kind of use it as a in-school qualifier, if you like, to get to the school games events. So we still ran that because the children take part in their year group bubbles anyway. So that was just run by, instead of myself running it for all years, the years ran it for themselves. I just set up the course in the morning and took it down in the evening, and gave staff the whole week to try and get it done, and gave them all the forms to complete. So we have like a top 10, and they score house points and score points to their houses. Like Burton, we've participated in the virtual events where we can. Our secondary school link, Camborne, have provided some things as well. So we did a Key Stage 1 multi-skills festival with them, which was virtual, and obviously we've done the sports or athletics and cross-country peninsula events that were run recently. And this half term we are reintroducing our after-school clubs, again staying in year group bubbles, and only staff delivering those that are within those year groups. So I'm with year 3 and 4 bubbles that I teach. So I'm running clubs for them, and we've got Plymouth Argyle running year 1 football and year 2 football, and Go Active offering clubs for Key Stage 2, but again, just year group clubs, so staying in their bubbles. And then there's some crossovers. Obviously, physical activity. We've provided equipment for breaks and lunchtime. We're not able to use our equipment as normal, so we got like a climbing boulder, climbing frames. That's all not being used for obvious reasons. So we made sure every class had sort of footballs and basketballs within their bubbles that they could use. We reintroduced the daily mile. We do that. We've done that for the last few years. So that's back underway. We asked staff to try and do it at least 3 times a week. So they've been able to get out and do that, which is great. And something I'll talk about later is a new, we do something called dazzling topic homeworks. So it's basically homework that's set for the children related to their topic. So I've kind of taken that idea that we use in school and created a separate, calling it dazzling health homework. So setting sort of like challenges, if you like, that children can do outside of school. And I'll talk a bit more about it later on. I've run a year 4 table tennis group, which is part of a table tennis kids program, which we piloted last year just before we were locked down. So restarted that again. So it's myself taking out 16 children on a Friday morning for about 45 minutes to work through various table tennis activities. And this last half term, we restarted our year 5 surf lessons. We've been doing this for the last 2 or 3 years. With a group called Global Borders, so that was able, because it's outside, classes going just as classes, for staying in their bubbles, and it was all outdoors. So we've been able to do that again, and we hope then to restart that in the spring after Easter. And we had Chance to Shine lined up to start this term. That's obviously been postponed, and we've booked in again now for after February half term to hopefully get in with them between then and Easter. And if we're not able to do it, then we have been offered the chance to do it virtually with Cornwall Cricket, which is great. If I could have the next slide, please. So in terms of our approach was kind of to cover all bases really in some sort of way. We wanted to keep things as normal as possible for the children. So obviously teaching PE as normal, the lessons were slightly different, but trying to keep it normal. We ran our in-house events like we would have normally. We'd always do cross country in the first term, so we've managed to do that, and that was exactly the same as it would normally be. But obviously going forward, our future in-houses will be slightly different. There will be more individual skill, personal challenge based, scoring points, that kind of thing. So we're looking at ways to try and do that. Obviously, if we have to do it across the winter months, where it might be harder to get outside. But in the past, we've obviously run a lot of team sport things like basketball and football, rugby, netball, but they won't be able to necessarily run unless it's just within bubbles. So we might look to try skill scoring points things. So it might be basketball shots and things, doing it as a part of a lesson, and the children obviously score points to their houses, and we can still run that in some capacity, which would be great. And one of our main things was a particular focus on the healthy lifestyle choices. So we know that obviously in our area at Camborne, we've got quite a high level of deprivation. A lot of our children had unhealthy lockdown experiences. So we wanted to use this opportunity to highlight health and well-being, and how it's not just doing sport. It's quite a common misconception at our school in particular, where children, if they don't like football and rugby or netball, they kind of assume then straight away that they're not healthy. So we kind of wanted to address that misconception. But in terms of our barriers and how we overcame them, obviously got a lot more class teachers teaching their own PE to stay within their bubbles. So that's why obviously we created for this last half term, quite a easily accessible scheme of work that was limited equipment, kept activities relatively simple, and just focused on those fundamental movements and locomotion. So it was hopefully for them easy to follow, but also not having to get a huge amount of equipment and keep things like that clean. So it was keeping it really basic. We've also got a lack of indoor space, I'm sure, like a lot of primary schools. So the focus of outside events where possible. We were lucky, obviously, with the weather last time a little bit, but I imagine it's going to get harder as we go through the winter. So that's going to be something we're going to obviously look to adapt again. We're obviously in year group bubbles, I'm sure like a lot of schools are, and I'm myself, as I mentioned, only with year 3 and 4. So choosing inter-house events that would be suitable for the whole year group bubbles to compete in, and perhaps simple things that the teachers and TAs within those year group bubbles will be able to run and keep score of it and do those sorts of things for myself, because in the past that's something I would have run for the whole school. Where we've had things like these different school games, events and stuff, I've taken a bit of time to not sort of adapt the paperwork that comes through, just to make it really clear for staff that perhaps we're asking to run them. So just some of those sheets, they're great, they've got all the information on, but they're sort of 2 or 3 pages. So I've tried to sort of collate it down to sort of 1 side of A4, 2 sides to cover all of it, that the teachers can hopefully still run those within their PE lessons and keep it within the time constraints. Obviously, inactive, unhealthy lockdown, some of our children stuck indoors, so we encouraged, with the Daily Mile, as I mentioned, active breaks and our dazzling homework, which I'll talk about on the next slide. Our SLT buy-ins are really good, very supportive, getting the children active, focus obviously on being outside where possible. They're really keen for us to restart our swimming, so we've really been pushing to do that. Like I said, we had it lined up to start this last week, so we've now pushed that back to after Christmas, hopefully. We've run our surf lessons, as I've mentioned, which is great, and as I say, very supportive to get any sort of outdoor events going on, staying within our bubbles. Don't know if we can get the slide back up there, it seems to have disappeared.
Don't know what happened there. 1 second. I'm going to have to skip through. Can you see it again now?
Yeah, going through, they come in, yeah. In terms of top tips, the last one, it's quite hard to give other people tips, isn't it? Because we're obviously our schools are very different in many ways. So my sort of top tip was obviously with you knowing your school, your children, your space, what equipment you have, it was to find things that work for you. So obviously in a minute I'm going to mention the dazzling homework that we've started, and that concept was already in existence for our topic lessons. So for the children, it's been really easy for them to understand, because it's set up in almost exactly the same way. It looks very similar, but it's just now one on health. So that was something that's kind of seamlessly kind of just fitted into school, and even though it's something brand new, it hasn't confused anyone. Parents kind of know what it's about, so that worked for us. It might not work for you, but that's my point. Find things that work for you and that you can do. And then the second one was just, I think, accept that we're not able to do what we usually do. I certainly, for the first few weeks of term, found it very difficult, not being able to do the things we normally did. First few weeks of term, you get all your clubs started, you start sorting out your teams and all those sorts of things, and we weren't able to do it. So it took me a while to adapt, probably. So I think it's just accepting now that things aren't going to get back to normal anytime soon. So we need to sort of, get used to this new normal and find things that we can do within our schools, which is what we've obviously started to do in that last few weeks of the last half term. So I'll go on to the last slide. So the main thing that we've done kind of different, if you like, is these health and wellbeing homework grids. So basically, we created one for Key Stage 1, one for Key Stage 2, different things to do that scored points from 20 up to 50. We gave certificates out for children that scored a certain amount of points. So I think it was 100 points for bronze, 150 silver, 300 points for gold. And the highest scoring boy and girl in each year group received a prize. So we bought a range of different things, from sort of colouring pens and pencils to sports equipment, swimming hats, swimming goggles, footballs and things like that they could choose from. So the activities themselves are all quite different. The idea was to tackle that misconception that it has to be sporty, so that they aren't all sporty. You know, for 20 points for Key Stage 2, it was just go to the park and play for at least 30 minutes just to score some points. There's things on there about eating fruit and veg. I think 50 points to eat 5 portions of fruit in one day. A challenge to only drink water for a day, various things. Some physical challenges and then lots that weren't. I think there's even things there about you know, use the internet to research, you know, why you should warm up before exercising, various things. You know, get out for a walk is on there, things to do as a family. And what was nice was a lot of our children, I say a lot, some of our children were, when we introduced this, kind of were sort of saying, oh, you know, I do this, or, you know, we've done this and I can do that, which was really nice. And I suppose the difficulty is obviously making sure it targets the children that you want it to target, because lots of these things you'd like to think a lot of families would do. So we were really pushing for obviously some of the children perhaps that we wanted to target, trying to encourage them to do these things. So, you know, in Key Stage 1, it's things to do with your family, you know, catching with a family member, timing yourself, how long you can, you know, balance on one foot, various things. There's some active travel stuff in there. So we change this every half term. So we've got a new grid now for this next half term. And it was fairly popular. It was particularly popular with Key Stage 1. A lot of children, obviously, as you went up the school, the numbers kind of went down, but that would partly be because with it being a new thing, it was probably more staff issue of actually making sure this was printed and put into reading records and things, and make sure that it was children were reminded about it. So now we've sort of had that first half term to iron out any teething problems. We're really looking forward to this, hopefully staying and being something we do every half term as a challenge, and obviously building up to trying to encourage children to win those prizes. And then obviously I think we hope to, at the end of the school years, is keep a tally of the children's points throughout the year. So then at the end we'll have you know, your highest point scoring boy or girl from each year group for the entire year, perhaps something a little bit more special for them. So yeah, these grids have been a really good chance for us to tackle that misconception that I mentioned, that, you know, these children, it was saying to them, if, you know, if you're going out for a walk, if you're, you know, drinking more water, if you're eating fruit and veg, you know, going to the park, they're healthy choices. You are healthy, you know, you can be a healthy person and not, you know, want to play a competitive team sport, for example. I think I've sent these through so that, you know, I'm happy for them to be shared. If anyone wanted to take that sort of idea and make it relevant to your school, then feel free. But that's it from me. If anyone's got any questions.
No questions?
No. All
Oh
good.
yes, please. Somebody would like it shared.
Cool. I've sent it through to somebody within the
Did you send it to Tim?
active formal, possibly. Yeah, I mean, I'll send it again. But yeah, happy to share these across, or if yeah, and get them out to you guys. That's absolutely fine.
Great. Well, yeah, that's fine. If you send them on to me, I can always send them because I've got all the email addresses, so that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll do that then.
Those grids are fabulous. They're great. Love them. Right, handing over now to Beth from St Francis.
Hello, hi, lovely to speak to you all. Can we just pop to the first slide, please, Emma, if that's all right? Lovely. So just a very quick little bit about me. I am a Year 3 teacher at St Francis in Falmouth. We've recently joined 19 other primary schools within the Kernow Learning Trust. I'm the PE lead, I'm on the literacy team, and I am a staff governor at school. Very similarly to Joe and to Paul, we are 2 form entry, reception all the way up to Year 6. Very similar numbers. Oh. Did you just lose me?
Just a little bit.
Am I back? So we're 2 form entry, 420-ish children on roll currently. We are very lucky that we have large buildings, large outdoor playgrounds and grassy areas, which at the moment are off limits because it does turn into a bit of a bog this time of year. And we have up until now had fairly successful sporting achievements, which has been we're really proud of. Next slide, please. So I thought I would just have start with having a look at what the current projection looks like for the children that we have in our schools, with childhood inactivity being at an all-time low and being described as a global epidemic. So not just something that is affecting us in the UK or us just in Cornwall, it is affecting children all around the world. A 2020 study has said that actually the short-term effects of the COVID pandemic could permanently cause issues for our children with the risk of obesity, diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So we need to work out a way now to create a sustainable future for our PE and physical activity in schools and hopefully outside of school as well. So as I'm sure all of you know, and obviously was highlighted this morning as well, the guidance surrounding PE is so vague, and I think it is just how we interpret it in our own schools and how we are able to implement it. Obviously, I am very lucky, alongside Joe and Paul, we have a large school, so we are likely to have larger areas than some schools that are 1 form or even smaller. So I thought I would take the overview of what we're doing. I have also spoken to Cags Gilbert, who is at Constantine, and she's within our trust, and they are a 1 form entry school. So I've got a slightly different pitch as well to be able to offer you some ideas of how they're doing it. Next slide, please. Thank you. So at St Francis, very similarly, we have 2 PE lessons mapped out each week. Now, we do have a large hall, which is probably about 3 times the size of our average classrooms. So we are very lucky. Our hall has, I think it has about 9 windows and 3 doors, which can be propped open. 2 of them are fire doors, but that has been addressed in our fire risk assessment. So the way it was mapped initially during the summer, when I mapped out a COVID safe curriculum, it was to sort of implement a curriculum that meant that we are encouraging social distancing as much as we can and ensuring that majority of our lessons are outdoor, on our outdoor spaces. We are lucky to have 1 very large playground that can be split into 2, and then we have a separate playground completely, which is at the top of our school. So we can have 3 outdoor hard ground lessons going on at any time. We are using equipment, but we are minimising that, and unfortunately it's down to the teachers to clean that equipment after it has been used. In upper Key Stage 2, EYFS and Key Stage 1, they do have a TA in the afternoons, which is predominantly when the PE lessons are held. So the TAs will take responsibility for cleaning before and after. Obviously, children's hands are washed before lessons and after lessons, and with the EYFS map of PE lessons, we have kept it just solely, especially this term, to focusing on the ABCs, so that hopefully we are not entrusting our 5-year-olds with lots of equipment which they're not going to understand that they need to not share. Within our PE lessons, Key Stage 2, if we are doing, for example, a netball lesson and we're working on passes, we will just keep it within those 4 children. For example, if there's a group of 4, then those 4 children will work together throughout the whole lesson. So we're not moving children around so that one group is touching a ball and then moving to another ball. So we'll keep it to that. We have Tassano, I think is how you pronounce it, in school, spray bottles. I've also put Dettol wipes in all of our PE cupboards so that they are easily accessible for the members of staff that have to clean down the equipment afterwards. When we are indoor, which it doesn't happen very often, but when we do use our hall, we have to wear face coverings. So it is brought into our school. Unluckily, we were closed. Well, 3 of our bubbles were closed before half-term holiday due to 3 positive cases. So it is now across our school that we wear face coverings in any communal area. So unfortunately, when we are teaching indoors, we do have to wear face coverings. Risk assessments have been done for indoor, for outdoor, and I'll get further down in a minute to after school clubs as well. And we did, up until today actually, we did have a policy that our children were just wearing trainers and removing their ties for PE lessons, but we have followed suit now, and we are going to PE days, so the children will come in their PE kits on those days. One thing I just wanted to mention that we do make sure that we do, and I'm sure like other schools, we have emotional check-ins. So on the back of our classroom doors, we have 5 pictures, and they represent being happy, they represent being sad, they represent being just okay, there's frustrated, and there's upset. And the children, when they come in the morning, they will put their peg on whichever feeling that they're feeling at that time, and then a teacher or a TA will take them to one side, and they'll do that again at lunchtime. Now, what I make sure that we do is we get them to have a look at their emotional check-in when we come in from PE lessons. I think because the children come in so excited and they're full of adrenaline, majority, I'd say 99.9% of them will put their pegs onto happy. And I think it's a really good thing to model that being active is creating these feelings of happiness. So hopefully we can roll that out at home. We are very lucky as well to have an outdoor gym. So the year before last, we raised some money and we used a little bit of sports premium to create an outdoor gym area, which can be used as well on top of our PE lessons and our outdoor time, which are quite easily cleaned down. There's 6 pieces of equipment that can be cleaned down after they've been used. Obviously Active 30 and Brain Break, so there's just a few there. Go Noodle, Cosmic Yoga, Super Movers. If you haven't come across them yet, they're great for inside the classroom because they use the football mascots to do the times tables, so very popular with the boys. The Youth Sports Trust 60-second challenge cards, if you haven't come across them yet, they're fantastic, especially for inside the classroom. And I've just put lockdown ideas at the end because it was a document that I came up with over lockdown, which was broken into ideas for parents or carers to use at home with their children. And it's lots of different videos or different websites that they can access, and that's broken into EYFS, Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. And as well as Paul, I'm quite happy to share that if you would like that to give to your teachers or to give to your parents if you feel that there is not a lot of activity going on at home. Now, after school clubs, I know it's a little bit of a grey area, but we have had, in consultation with my head, SLT and Chair of Governors, we have decided that we are going to go ahead. We only brought in after school clubs this week, so following on from half term. We have Plymouth Argyle that come in and they do it in bubbles. So it is seen as a wraparound care, and it is communicated to the parents as a wraparound care. And each bubble has their own coach. So on a Monday, we have year 3, on a Tuesday, year 4, year 5, and then year 6 on a Thursday. And they have 2 separate playgrounds completely. So one bubble will go to the top playground and one bubble will stay at the bottom. That was a huge uptake. And I think, fingers crossed, all being well, we can carry on with that. I'm really hoping we can, because the children have really thoroughly enjoyed it, and they've only had 1 session. So the smiles on their faces says it all. Local community links. Now, before all this happened, and obviously this PowerPoint went out before the guidance came out, so this isn't currently happening, but we are trying to promote our community links more so this year, due to the fact that our sport in school cannot be as prominent as it has been in previous years. So at the moment we've got Falmouth United, the football team. They are coming in, so they're coming in the summer term, all being well, to run some workshops with our reception children, because our reception children are sometimes the ones that miss out on the coaches coming in. So they're going to work with our reception children to do some workshops to try and promote the under 6 football team. We also have links with dance clubs, and we also have links with Sustrans. We've done some work with them the early part of this year as well. Swimming, not happening at the moment. We use a local leisure centre which is closed. Risk assessments are all in place, and speaking to CAGS as well at Constantine, she is the same. Risk assessments are in place, ready to go, but the facilities are just not allowing it. Returning to competitive leagues and qualifiers, again, like the other two schools, we've done intra events that's come down from our Falmouth Schools PE lead, so our cluster lead, and we have, as a school, taken part with 4 other schools in this event, and that was for sports or athletics. We're going to try again after this half term to look at something slightly different. And sports premium usage is very tricky at the moment. We're finding it really, really hard. We've got lots of things in place for summer term, because we won't be having residentials this year, so we're going to have lots of things in place for the summer term. But at the moment, the usage of the underspend from last year is, well, that we're not finding that very easy to spend. The only thing that we have decided on is that we're going to give each class teacher £250 from the sports premium to buy some form of indoor activities for wet plays, for lunchtimes, and for lunchtime clubs, if we can eventually run them in their bubbles. So that'll be things like Velcro, darts, the cups with the balls, table tennis. So we're going to invest in some clip-on nets so that they can play table tennis inside the classrooms. At the moment, we are finding it really, really difficult. We are subsidising part of Plymouth Argyle to come in to do the clubs as a school. So that hopefully that would have increased our participation, and as we are finding at the minute, it has increased our participation even so from last year when it was open to larger numbers. Next slide, please. So top tips, just to finish off, I found it really hard to do top tips because I think everybody is trying to do it their own way, and no size fits all. So all very similar to Paul, I've said that find a way that works for your school. We have no clear guidance, and it has to be sustainable, because we don't know how long this is going to go on for. We don't know, we could be dealing with this for the whole of the academic year, and we need to ensure that these children that are getting no exercise or no physical activity outside of school, especially now that their clubs have closed, we need to ensure that they are getting their 30 minutes and PE lessons inside of school. And then my top tip personally for me is to have really clear links with your head teacher and your SLT, and also your chair of governors, who I spoke to today on the phone about various different things. Guidance is changing constantly. They're the ones that are up at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night looking at the new guidance that comes in on a Thursday, and my head teacher is straight on to me in the morning to say, right, this has happened, this has been changed, this has been said, and then we try and find a way together to implement it so that it's not having too much of a knock-on impact to our children. And then just useful links. They're not, I doubt that they are anything new to any of you, but the national governing body websites as well, they are the ones that are telling us if and when our sports are opening, closing, what is changing. So they're good ones to keep an eye out on. And that is me, all done, hopefully in the 8 minutes.
Beth, thank you so much. I don't
You're
know
welcome.
Any questions?
Yeah, I saw it was pinging, but I didn't read it. Sorry.
Oh no. Well, I was going to mention that whilst you were delivering, Paul let us know that there's been a U-turn on extracurricular. The YST have tweeted this afternoon that the DCMS have said that they can continue. So we'll wait for some news from the Department of Education now, I guess, and see, and see if it comes up. So that would be a lovely positive move if that happened.
That would be. I wouldn't have even had to put it in the PowerPoint.
Things are changing, like you said, they're changing so rapidly.
By the minute, yeah.
I loved the emotional check-ins. I think that's a lovely idea. Do you guys do you check how they feel before they come to PE and after the physical?
Yeah. Yeah, so they will do it because all of our PE lessons are straight after lunch. They'll check in after they come back in from lunchtimes, and obviously we all know that lunchtimes for children are sensitive times. They've fallen out with someone, so we do have a few that come in upset or angry or frustrated. We'll have a quick chat with them, take them out for PE, and then sort of gauge, hopefully, that then they have increased up to being happy again, or at least if they're just okay at that point, we can see that there's been a bit of a change, and that's helped.
I love that. That's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If anybody wants to see how we lay it out, I'm happy to take a picture of the one on the back of my classroom door and send it on. That's fine.
Oh, amazing. That'd be really useful.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm handing over to Nick now.
Hi there, guys. So very similar to all the other schools, actually. We're a similar number school, about 400 children and 2 form-entry. It's Penpol School down in Hale. And I was going to talk to you about something that we've actually brought in. So I think, is that on the next slide, Emma? So we brought in these activity trackers. You might have heard of them. They're the Moki bands. And the reason we've done them, the most important reason, is to monitor physical activity across the school day. So at the moment, the children come in and they put their wristbands on. What they are silicone wristbands with no display on. So there's no kind of distraction for the children to be staring at them like a pedometer all day. And then it records their active minutes and their steps across the day. And as you can see here, here's just a quick snapshot of one of the children. So this is just showing the steps that they've done during the day and kind of almost the timeline of when they've done the steps. So there's no surprise really that 10 till half 10 is break time, and 12 till what would be 12 till 1 is lunchtime. But like some of the other schools have said, our lunchtimes have been kind of chopped in half almost. It's half the afternoon or half an hour is spent inside having lunch and half is out on the playground. So you can see there, this is someone in my class, and we go out for the first half an hour, and then 12:30 till 1 they're obviously sat down. What Moki enables you to do is to set up profiles for the children. So each child has a profile and you can track their steps day to day, and as you can see the bottom right, it gives a kind of a percentage increase and a grade depending on how many steps they do. So there's an element of kind of intrinsic motivation to beat their score from the day before. So the reason we got these is because, as you all know, and as everyone has said today, physical activity is decreasing, and even more so now in this kind of post first lockdown, pre-second lockdown kind of stage that we're in at the moment. So deep down, I knew we needed to do more in terms of getting the children to hit those recommended 60 minutes, getting to hit those 60 minutes a day. Once the data has been collected, how the children scan their watches back in is just with a wireless scanner. It's about the size of like a card reader. So there's no plugging in. They literally just walk up to the computer and almost tap and go, and it logs their steps for that day. What it's enabled us to see is, as I said, with the timeline that we've got on the screen at the moment, is it allows us to see when the children are inactive, and it's quite harrowing data really, because I thought my class were quite active during kind of curriculum time. As you can see, that first hour they're really not, and that middle hour they're really not, kind of that between break and lunchtime. This was the day that we did PE. That's why the afternoon looks as it does. So it allows you to find inactive periods during the day, but it also allows you to group the children. You can compare children from different groups. So you can compare genders, you can compare pupil premium children to non-pupil premium, and you can also compare SEN children. The biggest benefit from having these, I think, is the element of competition. Simply just putting them on the children is almost like, one of the teachers said, it was like putting a superhero cape on. Just putting this green silicone wristband on their wrist made them do more physical activity in kind of what we call like their times. So at break times and lunch times, they'd be running laps of the playground just to get their steps up. So that's the element of competition is probably the best thing that we've had. Next slide, please, Emma. Okay, so what we found out before COVID. So we only had these for about 3 weeks before the schools closed. So we're very much in the infancy of rolling them out, but the kids have loved them. So the older children seem to be way less active than the younger children. And I think this is due to kind of just the expectations of the classroom. I think the older the children get, the more we expect them to sit down and do their work. So we found that we've used them in year 6, year 5, year 3 and year 2, and we found that the year 6 children were far more sedentary during the day than the year 2 children. Girls were far less active than boys, particularly in year 6. So if we take data from yesterday, the kind of average boy was getting about 6,000 to 7,000, and the majority of the girls were around about the 3,000 to 4,000 steps a day. So it's, for some of them, they were less than half of the most active, and that comes down to not only their choices at break times and lunch times, but if they're not going to choose to be active, it falls on us as teachers to find out ways in which we can improve those inactive times. And it says, as you can see, session 2 between break and lunch tends to be the least active, and for me, that's when I teach kind of English and reading and spelling. So on average, my class were hitting less than 150 steps in an hour and a half. So we knew there needed to be a change, and that change was going to come in the way in which we teach the curriculum. Next slide, please. Okay, so in this kind of, I say post-COVID, but in this during COVID world that we live in at the moment, obviously our main aim is to improve the activity levels that the children are having during the broad and rich curriculum that we're trying to deliver. So more opportunities for active learning during curriculum time, that comes from all the things that that Beth's just spoken about, actually, in that last slide where we said about the super movers, the YST 60-second things, all those active breaks that we can get into the school day. We found loads, actually, that I knew about them, but I didn't use them as much as I should. Maths and English, treasure hunts, orienteering. A favourite of mine is kind of like non-table sharing. So rather than saying like swap with the person next to you, it's just getting the kids up and about and moving around. Obviously, that's quite difficult at the moment, but just getting the children to share around the classroom as opposed to with their person next to them. It might not be many steps, but it does get them out of their seat, gets their feet moving before they're moving back. Sorry, where did I get to? Spread them across the whole school. What we're intending to do is we've bought 2 sets of these, so we've got enough for a whole year group. So I'd like to get to a stage where year 6 can wear them for 1 week, year 5 for another week, year 4, and we can get them used across the whole school to benefit every child in the school. That will also allow us to run kind of challenges like house competitions, termly step champions, and something which I've just introduced is kind of like a see how far we can walk challenge. So I think it's about 20 million steps to walk around the world. I don't know who tested that, but we're going to see if in the year how far we can get around the world, and then regularly update parents and children through our newsletters and so on. Something we've done post-COVID is we've timetabled our outdoor spaces. As I said at the start, we're a 2-form entry school with 400 children, and we don't have a huge amount of space. We've got 1 hard court, which is the size of a netball court. So actually only 1 class can be out on a hard standing area at one time. So with 14 classes, that's quite difficult. So we've timetabled areas such as our wildlife garden, the field. We've got outdoor classrooms. All of these areas have been timetabled, and the take up from teachers has vastly improved. Every afternoon I look out my window and there's always someone somewhere doing something, which wasn't necessarily the case before. And if we can trust them, what I'd like the children to do is to wear them home and wear them kind of as close as they can from 7 to 7. Because at the moment, all we're doing is monitoring physical activity during the school day. But I think it'd be brilliant for us to be able to collect that information kind of from, as I said, 7 to 7 to find out which children and who is inactive at home, because that will allow us to target those inactive children through intervention, just like you would for children who are struggling with maths or struggling for English. You give them intervention. This would highlight those children and would allow us to target those through an Energy Club intervention. Next slide, please. So challenges, the biggest challenges, they're not very cheap. As I said, we've bought two sets, and they're around about £600 each. However, when we bought them, I asked them how much they were, and he said they're £600, and I kind of said, that's too much. What's your best price? And we managed to get a discount. I did say that I'd be talking about them on a conference to see if I could get some free stuff, and they said no. If anyone is interested, I'm not a salesperson whatsoever, but I do have access to a discount code. Personally, I think they're a great use of the sports premium, and our SLT agreed. because it's something that they need the battery changed every 10 months. But apart from that, they're under warranty. They will be there. It's something we can spread across the whole school and have a positive impact on every single child, hopefully. Okay, it seemed to tick most of the boxes. When I was reviewing our spend last year, most of the key indicators I could tick these off against. One other teacher said that it was like just putting the band on a child, even if like the battery was flat, it was like putting rocket fuel in a car. They just, as soon as you put it on, they were gone, they were taken off. They knew what it was. They knew it was tracking their activity, so they were trying their hardest to beat their friends or get the highest in the class. Every day, at the end of the day, the children scan them in, and they're trying to scan it in, not looking at the reader, trying to look at the whiteboard, see how many steps they've got. As I said, competing against each other. In terms of getting staff and SLT on board, the staff were very keen. If you're SLT or anything like mine, they love nothing but data. And the first 2 weeks I did this with my class, the data was horrendous, really. It really highlighted how inactive our children were. So particularly from my point of view, as I said before, as a teacher who thinks their class is pretty active, they really weren't. So it's really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that not only can we do more, but also when in the day we can do more. Because as you've seen from the previous slides, break times and lunch times, actually the majority of children are quite active. It's really those English sessions more so than maths. And I could see, and other teachers could see from their daily timetable, which areas the kids were just sat in their seats. As I said before, I'm really not a salesman for these people, but we've really got on with them. And introducing them has kind of not only opened our eyes to what we can do as individual teachers to improve kind of our daily teaching, but it's given the children ownership. The children know, as I said, know what they do, and they're desperate to improve their steps from the day before. They're desperate to beat the person next to them. Just putting them on them has made the children more active without any other intervention than that. Obviously, it's allowed us to put other things in place, but just by putting them on them has made the children more active. And I think that's all from me. And there are a few questions there. Someone said, great idea, which company are these from? They're from Moki, it's spelled M-O-K-I. If you simply Google them or pop them on, I think they've got quite a good Twitter thread. But yeah, M-O-K-I. As I said, they're not the cheapest thing, but in terms of value for money, I think they really are. They really are worth it. And as I said, if people are interested and want to buy them, before you do, the only thing they gave me after I'd spent all that money was a discount code. So I might be able to help you out with that. Is that a Simpson hand up there, Beth?
Yeah, it is. Sorry, I wasn't going to type it all. How just because going back to what you were saying about working out your children with the lowest activity and that you would put in intervention. Sorry, you might not know the answer to this because you might not have been there yet, but how would you go about putting intervention in if it was just like 2 children per bubble?
So in the,
am I putting you on the spot? Sorry.
Not at all. So in the normal world, what we'd have done was we'd be pulling those kids out of things like assembly and times like that. But obviously at the moment where we are, it might just be kind of in lessons. So take a child who's got sensory needs and needs those active breaks.
Yeah.
That child will get taken out with a TA just for 5 minutes here and there. And I had a child last year with ADHD, and so far this year, I think my highest steps has been about 7,000. He clocked nearly 12,000 steps in a day because he was having these active breaks. So now, if I was going to do that, it would be that way. But there'd be no reason to take maybe 1 or 2 children out when actually you could get them all out. But yeah, our energy club interventions used to run during assemblies, and they were kind of like invite-only clubs. So they were invited by the fact they didn't appear on any of the registers for clubs. And before, I laboriously filled out a spreadsheet where I spoke to every child in Key Stage 2 and asked what clubs they do at home, what clubs they do at school. But hopefully this will replace that now. We can see the kids that are inactive and we can provide something for them. Obviously, as I said before, it would be difficult at this current stage.
Yeah, brilliant. If you are sending out the discount codes, can you send it this way, please?
Yeah, I've got it.
Thanks.
I've got it now, so I'll pop it in the chat there in a second.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, can
Up as well.
sorry, has somebody else got their hand up?
There's lots of hands up.
Oh, could I just interrupt and just whilst it's on the discount code, in between the break, I did a live chat with them. So if you go straight onto their website, I just in the live chat said, I'm looking for 2 classes lot. I believe I can get a £10% discount code, and they just gave it to me straight away.
Yeah, I thought they would. Like I said before, I just said to them, I'm not paying that. What's the best price? And the guy knocked about £150 off.
That's it. They quoted me, so I said 2 classes, but I said 62 because one of our classes has got 31, and I thought just to add for 2 extra in case of breakages. So 62 and 2 readers was £1,112 plus VAT, and that was with a £124 discount.
Yeah, I think that's roughly
10%. Yeah.
I've popped in there anyway, but like I said, if you ask for it, I'm sure they'll give it. I've actually had a bit of difficulty with them this week, which was perfect timing, but it was to do with the fact our batteries needed changing, and actually the support from the support they've given me has been excellent. Really, I've managed to fix them kind of completely myself, and I'm really not a techie guy. So the support platform that's provided with them is actually, as much as you don't want them to go wrong, if they do, you want that support to be in place, and it certainly has been this week. I think there's a couple other questions there. Have you got your hand up, Paul?
Yeah, I was just wondering, we've actually got a couple of class sets ourselves, and like you had started them pre-lockdown, and haven't. I was just wondering what issues you've had, because I know we had a few teething problems, not with the software. It's like you explained. We had, for example, children realizing they could shake their wrists and their steps would go up. So we trialed it with year 4, and they struggled. Some of the children struggled to actually, probably their poor motor skills, actually put them on. So they ended up trying to force their hands through a already closed band and sort of broke them, which most were great and sent us some replacements and things. But obviously then said, you know, if you need more, you'll have to pay for them. I just wondered if you'd encountered any similar issues, and perhaps if you had any solutions, because I know our competitive children were, like you said, they're all really excited when they get them, and then we kind of had a few issues where we had to sort of take them off some children because they were getting a bit silly, and you know, scanning 30,000 steps at the end of a 6-hour day was just, you know, clearly not accurate.
Initially, when I give them out, I tell the kids that doesn't work, and children being children are quite gullible in the fact that if I told them shaking it doesn't work, I said it's not like a pedometer, it's like some other funky thing that it measures their movement. So I teach year 6, and my children haven't had that issue, but I know further down the school they did. And basically what the teacher said is if they thought they'd achieved something that wasn't realistic and wasn't correct, they'd almost erase their day. And that was like heartbreaking for the children, because in terms of like the competition, the class competition, they'd be, rather than being 20,000 steps ahead, they'd be 30,000 steps behind. And we only had that issue once with one child, and that seemed to have the right effect. In terms of putting them on, for younger children, I can imagine they're not the easiest of things. And I've got a few children in my class with kind of motor skill issues, and they just seem to help each other out. But as you said, when they've sent you some because they broke, I had 4 that weren't working after I changed the battery, and they sent me 4 new ones. I don't know how new the company is. I think we were one of the first to kind of, not one of the first, but we were, well, maybe one of the first to kind of to jump in it and buy them, because initially the software was only on Windows, and we're a Mac school, so I bought them and then they came and I couldn't use them, so I had to get an old PC out of the cupboard. So then I actually trialed the Mac software before they released it. So as I said, the communication I've had with them in things, they've been really quite helpful in that sense. But yeah, there will always be teething problems, and as I said, in year 6 I've not had as many as probably they will have further down the school, so I'm not sure if we will get to a stage where we use them in reception, because I don't think they're water resistant, but they're not waterproof and sandproof, so I'm not sure how they get on during free flow activities. I think there's another question there, isn't there? Have you got a question, Gareth?
No, I didn't have a question. Sorry. I think I've done that in error. But I just think it's a great. I did put comment in there that it, it's a good usage of maybe that underspend from last year. Because obviously there's if anyone else is like me, there's quite a chunk of money there to spend before March. So yeah, I think it's great. Super.
I think the reason I kind of just jumped at buying them before is actually we had a bit of a kitty before the underspend from last year. So rather than it kind of sitting there waiting for something, trying to find something, a really effective way to spend them, I thought we'll just crack on and do it. And whether we buy 2 more sets, I'm not sure. I'd like to have one in Key Stage 1 and one in Key Stage 2, because as I said, we've got 7 year groups and only 1 set, so they'd only get them once, a kind of a half term. So I'm toying with the idea of getting another 2, but it's just sitting down and looking at the funding for that, really. Any other questions? Don't think I missed any in the chat there.
No, I think you covered them all. Everybody got quite excited. Tim's also managed to copy and paste the link into the chat regarding extracurricular there that the YST have just tweeted. So if you wanted any more information about that, that's also gone into the chat. Nick, thank you so much. Again, really interesting.
The graveyard shift for me, the last one on the last session.
Say that again.
So that's the graveyard shift for me. It's the last person in the last session.
You did very, very well, really well. Thank you to all 4 of you for presenting some real inspirational ideas there to take away from each of those presentations. So thank you. Just a little reminder that the Winter Games is coming up next week. If you haven't already registered, you still can. And hopefully with the return of extracurricular, that could make that little event a little bit easier to run. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. I hope you've had a great day. If there are any more questions, please email me, it's not a problem at all, or contact Tim at Active Cornwall. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe, everybody.